Hi, I'm Idella Storino, Advice and Service Editor at the Globe and Mail. I oversee stories that tackle life's everyday conundrums, from sleep to parenting, with advice you can use. If that's journalism you value, head to globeandmail.com/subscribe.
Hi, I'm Taylor Owen. From the Globe and Mail, this is Machines Like Us. So recently on this show, I said I thought we were running a mass social experiment with AI. The possible outcomes of that experiment, which range from utopian to catastrophic, are still unclear. But one thing that is certain is that young people are very much the guinea pigs in all of this. No one has adopted AI more enthusiastically than Gen Z. Almost all of them are using it. In classrooms and lecture halls, chatbots have become ubiquitous. And more than 70% of American teens say they've talked to an AI companion, with many saying they prefer it over real people. But Gen Z is also skeptical. Polling indicates that the vast majority are worried about the long-term effects of artificial intelligence, including job displacement, cognitive offloading, and its impact on the environment. So what exactly the future holds is anyone's guess. But Ava Smithing and Sneha Revanur want to make sure that Gen Z has a say in what this future looks like. Smithing became involved in tech policy after developing a debilitating eating disorder that she attributes to social media. Today, she's the advocacy director at the Young People's Alliance and the host of Left to Their Own Devices, a podcast about how technology is rewiring childhood. And Revanur is the founder and president of a youth-led nonprofit called Encode AI. Politico once called her the Greta Thunberg of AI. Together, Ava and Sneha are two of the most prominent and influential youth voices in tech right now. So I wanted to have them on to find out what Gen Z wants from the most powerful technology in history. Ava and Sneha, welcome to Machines Like Us.
Hi, thank you so much for having us. I'm excited to be here.
Thank you, Taylor. Yeah, it's super cool. I can't wait to dive in.
So, look, we spent a lot of time on this show talking to a lot of people who are more my age and significantly older than your age, or at least closer to that. Just to kick us off here, what's one thing that you think that older generations are just getting fundamentally wrong about AI? Ava, you want to go first?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think that older generations are seeing AI very black and white. Either half of the people are saying this is going to save the world, and half of the people are saying this is going to end the world. And I think young people are seeing artificial intelligence through a much more gray lens.
Stan?
I think that my main take here is that I think a lot of older people don't quite conceptualize exactly what you said about AI being the most powerful technology of all time. And I think the reason for that is because if you're an older person who's lived through various cycles of tech advancement, who's seen other technologies play out, who saw the internet play out, you kind of approach this whole conversation with this air of AI is non-unique. And I think that, people should stop exceptionalizing it. And I understand where that comes from, because of course you've seen so much societal disruption over the decades from tech. But I think that my perspective is that, we've never before tried to build a technology where the fundamental aim of its creators is to rival human cognition. Like there has just been no technology in human history where that has been the explicit goal. And I think that older generations don't necessarily approach AI with that perspective of, wow, this is unique and this is transformative. Whereas I think young people, are more willing to view it from that lens. And I think are more willing to kind of really approach the impacts from that lens as well.
Do you think that's because they, older generations have seen other technologies roll out at a different pace and and they're not living it in the same immediacy. The immediacy of it isn't quite there. Is that part
Absolutely.
of it?
I think that's totally true. I mean, we've looked at the graphs of what tech adoption has looked like for pretty much every other transformative technology that we've seen, and it's just been at a much slower rate. When you have a technology like ChatGPT, it's just significantly easier to adopt into your daily life than a lot of these other technologies that maybe had like a higher barrier to use. But I think that it's just been insane. I mean, I remember it's crazy because it's almost overlapped perfectly with my years in college where
Yeah.
ChatGPT was released to the public when I was in my freshman year. And so there still was a time when everyone was writing essays the old-fashioned way and just doing homework and living their lives the old-fashioned way. And I saw things just like totally change seemingly overnight. Obviously not overnight, but seemingly overnight. And I think that kind of rapid adoption is just unparalleled.
Yeah, it's funny. As you were saying that, I was reflecting on like my college. When I was in college, we got email. And like that's like in the middle of university, email sort of emerged and everyone got it. And that was like so disruptive. And like this transfer, the pace of impact of change of getting email versus getting generative AI is like qualitatively different, I think.
How did you guys send like campus-wide stuff before?
You didn't even really know. Well, there wasn't, right? Like,
oh, wow.
There
Sorry,
was no way of like.
I can imagine this. Yeah.
Well, there you go, right? Like that was like prehistoric
Oh my God,
age.
yeah.
But even like, but then you got email and you like didn't know what to do with it, right? Because nobody had cell
Yeah.
phones, so it was like email on your computer, and that was it. And anyways, we don't need to go down that ancient history. I want to learn a little bit about how you both started doing this work. You're both in really unique positions with a huge amount of impact. So I want to get a sense of why and how you got into this. Ava, I know this is personal for you, obviously. Can you tell us in our audience a little bit about why you're doing this and how you got into this?
I mean, I've always been really skeptical of tech advancement, just my natural disposition. My freshman year, I had a class, and the book that my professor had chosen for us to analyze was Technopoly by Neil Postman. And I just had this huge light bulb moment where I thought, all of these things I've been feeling my entire life have been eloquently written on these pages here. And I started getting really, really into this idea of responsible adoption of technology and consumer-powered technology. And then all of the while, I'm dealing with my own social anxieties and my own really negative experiences on Instagram. And when Frances Haugen blew the whistle in 2021, I think, it was an even bigger light bulb.
Can you be led by the algorithms to anorexia content? And they have literally recreated that experiment themselves and confirmed, yes, this happens to people. So Facebook knows that they are leading young users to anorexia content.
I said, oh my goodness, I am one of those teenage girls on Instagram with an eating disorder. No wonder I care so deeply about this issue. It's not just something that interests me, but it's something that is actively playing out in my life. And after that, I just became obsessed with trying to stop it.
I mean, it's interesting. I mean, you mentioned Frances's revelations there and the documents she disclosed. Those were very much focused on some kind of the structural and design elements of the problem that were being revealed, that things Facebook knew about the design of their products that were harming individuals and youth. Like, is that what drove you into that view of this? And was that meaningful when you were trying to explore the problem you were experiencing and to give them sort of a root cause, you know?
Yeah, I think Postman is without a doubt the foundation of all of it because he was looking at it from such a big picture angle. I mean, I wrote an essay for that class. I got a C on it. And I got a C on this essay because the thesis of my essay was Instagram is not likable. And this was 2019, and I was trying to prove that Instagram was intentionally designing its problems to cause social anxiety before there was any data on it. And I get a C on this paper because he said that there was not enough evidence. I didn't cite my sources well enough. And
have you gone back to that?
I
professor
haven't
since?
No,
you can name him or her now if you want.
I know.
mean, maybe now's your chance.
I'm waiting for the
A little
moment.
public call out.
No, I'm
Yeah.
waiting for the moment when I do something big enough to be able to email Professor Jeselowitz and be like, hey, I just wanted to let you know you gave me a C on this essay.
I won't take that as a slight, Ava.
No.
I think
well,
this podcast is surely big enough.
That this isn't the
podcast
moment?
is surely
I mean,
big
thanks.
enough. This is
No,
the
you
moment.
guys, the moment it has to be live. I think that eventually Stevens will bring me back to do a talk there. Like, they've been really into the work that I've been doing. And I think
so she'll do it on campus.
Yeah, I think that they're going to bring me back. And I think when I'm on campus, I'm going to say I got a C on this essay at Stevens because there wasn't enough data. But to answer your question, it's like my foundation looking at this problem through such a meta societal lens, and then Frances coming out and really validating that and giving really specific evidence of design features and decisions that were made in the company. It just all fell into place. The eating disorder story, my personal story on social media, was a way for me to get a foot in the door. And once I had people's attention talking about my personal experience and this sad story about a teenage girl, then I could start talking their ear off about some of these more meta problems that we were seeing.
So Sneha, you were still in high school when you founded Encode AI. How does a 15-year-old decide she wants to start working on AI policy?
I think a lot of people come to me now and they're like, wow, you had such amazing foresight. You must have been playing like 4D chess. And honestly, I didn't know what was going on. I just thought it was super cool at the time. I think even before ChatGPT, there was a lot of public conversation about some other types of AI. I think that specifically back in 2020, which is when I founded Encode, there was a lot of concern about surveillance. There was a lot of concern about algorithmic bias. That was the conversation of the hour back then. So I think that obviously the discourse looked very different, but there still was some amount of discourse. And I think that was kind of my backdrop. So in 2020, this is like during the pandemic, I was getting a lot more politically engaged. And I spent that summer before my junior year of high school, I believe, volunteering on various political campaigns, kind of learning the ropes. And I think I saw a ballot measure in my home state of California called Prop 25. And Prop 25, its aim was to basically replace the use of cash bail statewide with an algorithm, which critics, feared would expand bias. And then, organized a bunch of my friends to rally against Prop 25. And then come November, we were able to strike down that ballot measure during the 2020 elections. And that was really what I look back on. It was obviously just our opening salvo, right? Because so much has happened since then. I think that was when I had the realization, this is worth working on long term. We have the infrastructure to build something around this long term. This is not just about this one ballot measure. This is not just about California. There's a much broader conversation that I expect to emerge around the impacts of AI, and it's time for us to really, really build, public power around that. And so I think that was kind of where Encode came to be.
I think it's worth reflecting a little bit on how quickly this discourse and particularly some of the conversation around harm has evolved since the moment you were talking about. When we were talking about sort of the racial bias of parole board AIs. And there was a moment, you're right, pre-ChatGPT, where there was a lot of concerns, but they were very, very different than what they are now.
Yeah.
And in Canada, one of the big debates has been about Grok and then X allowing the use of AIs to undress people without their consent.
Yeah.
Right? And I'm wondering, Ava, just start what do you make of something like that as a problem?
I mean, it's an incentives problem. And that's what I've understood from the very, very beginning. And with the Grok thing, it's just what's going to make people use the product more. And for them, they're not necessarily having to weigh what impact is this going to have on people, but rather what impact is this going to have on our bottom line. This is a company who wants to make money. This is not a group of scientists who want to come up with the next, revolutionary thing that's going to save everyone. And they can brand themselves as that really, really easily. And there are a lot of AI scientists out there who do want to do that. But this is a company who wants to make money. This is a man who is a billionaire with an insatiable appetite for making money.
Sneha, you worked on the Take It Down Act, which was supposed to deal with some of this problem, right? About non-consensual human images. So what was missing from the Take It Down Act that meant it didn't force Grok to comply to this, right? It didn't really address this problem ultimately.
Yeah, so I think that one thing that's key to recognize about the Take It Down Act is it basically relies on victim reporting. And so, for example, if you yourself are featured in the image, then you can, go complain about it and get it taken down. But it doesn't stop the, original and native spread of the image in the first place. It's more so just if you are in this image, then you have a channel to get that taken down. Obviously, that's not a fully scalable solution just because there's so much imagery being distributed all over the internet. And especially with Grok, where you literally just, say, at Grok, can you undress this person or act Grok with this person in a bikini? It's the barrier to making that happen is just super, super low, right? And so I think that we're really going to need a much more at the source solution than just relying on victim reporting because that's just not scalable.
As you guys mentioned both off the top, I mean, Gen Z is in the throes of a kind of broad societal transition and adoption of a pretty transformative technology. And Ava, through the Young People Alliance, you talk to a lot of people of your generation. And how would you characterize Gen Z's view as much as you can to this technology?
Yeah, I think it varies an incredible amount from person to person, right? Something that I really stress about Gen Z is that we are not a monolith, but overwhelmingly what we hear from Gen Z is a very strong desire to preserve certain human aspects of life, right? When we talk about job automation, the number one flag that comes up in our listening sessions with our young people is, well, we want to make sure that the arts are preserved, right? We want to make sure that things that require human creativity aren't automated. We want to make sure that things that require human connection aren't automated. So they're nervous about automating things like therapy. They're nervous about automating things like healthcare, the creative side. But when it comes to these more white collar jobs that Gen Z already saw as quite frivolous, they don't have the same worry. I think at a general level, and I say this all the time, Gen Z has never been exposed to technology that's revenue model wasn't predicated on exploiting them. And I think because we grew up in this space where we were consistently being exploited by technologies, we don't think twice about it, really. You see a headline about, ChatGPT has driven someone to psychosis, and you're like, oh, of course it has, and then you move on with your day. It is funny, though, to hear the conversations that young people are having. We're so, let me think of the best way, like, all I want to say right now is like cope. We're so good at using humor as a coping mechanism. So when we go out and when we talk to young people about this, for the first X amount of time in that conversation, it's a joke. We're making jokes. And it takes a lot to peel that back and to get people to really think about what the long-term impacts are. But once they do, they want to preserve humanity. And they also are worried about how they're using it so frequently in their own lives. Like, they're very cognizant that maybe they don't want to be offloading their emotional reasoning skills to a chatbot, but it's so convenient and it's so easy. And they recognize that that's what their friends are doing, so they're going to do it. In school, you got to use the AI to remain competitive, to get a good standing in your class. In your social life, if all of their friends are talking to the AI about their emotional problems, and they're not talking to each other about it anymore. So you kind of just have to adapt.
Yeah, totally. I think that, Ava, you framed it super well. I think that people care about this, but I think by and large, I think people just actually don't really have fully formed opinions. And so it's hard to say what their opinion
You're
are
immersed in it, right? Like, how do you
exactly.
How do you step back and like evaluate its impact when you're living it day to day?
And I think Ava's made a fantastic point that we've grown up in it as well. And so I think that we have less of an external reference point, than previous generations do, because for them, the whole thing is much more jarring relative to like the reality they grew up in, versus for us, it's just been like one new thing after the other. And so I will say that, the polling shows people of our age group are actually pretty optimistic about AI, right? And I think that people feel pretty good about this. I think that anecdotally, I talked to a lot of my friends, and, they're all power users of ChatGPT. I mean, people have moved to, getting their ChatGPT wrapped at the end of the year, just like they get their Spotify wrap, right? And so I think that overall, definitely people will report that they are optimistic. I will say that once you peel back the layers, as Ava said, there probably is some latent anxiety about what does this mean for our future. But I think that we're just like so steeped in the experience of having our lives just like reinvented by new technology every couple of years that we don't really fully conceptualize what this is going to mean long term, and like don't actually see it as fundamentally different from, we all got on TikTok during 2020 and like what that was like for us, or even, just like generally getting into social media a couple of years prior to that, right? It just feels like the next thing in this long line of big lifestyle shifts, right? And I think that right now people are by and large still using AI as like a, glorified search engine, right? So they're like, because of that, they're not really fully internalizing, wow, this is like very different and very powerful versus just like the previous thing on steroids.
Yeah, I want to drill into that a little bit, right? So Ava, you said something really interesting there around, well, maybe we're not so worried that the white collar jobs we didn't want are going to go away. But Sneha, you've done a lot of work on the job market and how people should be approaching it. Can you talk, how should people in your position in university in their early 20s beginning to think about a job, think about their use of AI and the impact AI is having on their professional futures?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I think that there is a lot of uncertainty about this right now. So it's hard to give super concrete and like unfalsifiable advice. But I do have some general takeaways. For context, we just launched this project called Game Plan, which basically provides a career playbook for young people who are navigating the AI economy. And so I think that some of the things that have come up is, I think a lot of young people, they imagine their careers as like, I'm going to do this one thing for a very, very long time, whatever that one thing is, whether it's like banking, or I'm going to be an accountant for a very long time, or I'm going to do this like other, skill trade for a very long time. I think the big mindset shift is, imagine your career as just like a series of chapters of you running different experiments, doing different sprints on different kinds of things. The real thing that's going to be rewarded in the job market is adaptability. I think that people are going to see themselves shifting between jobs, shifting between industries. They're going to jump from one interest to another way more often.
Is there a precarious element to that creates
Totally
anxiety in a sense?
Yeah, I mean that sounds cool to me, but that obviously creates a lot of anxiety for other people who are like, I just wanted to like figure my life out right now, and like, but I think that what AI does enable, at least, or will enable for the near term, is the thing about white collar jobs, for example, being under attack. The thing about a lot of these like traditional jobs and the ladder itself being under attack is that it just like creates this window of opportunity for you to go do all of the self-directed things that you like have always wanted to do and kind of pursue those moonshots in a way that you just couldn't before. And I think that's going to be a very empowering possibility in the near term. And I think that the next thing is that I think a lot of people. It's really interesting. A lot of people, they hear this, they can't get a job, and keep in mind, before AI has even like really descended upon the job market, it is already right now harder to get a job than like ever, right?
That's not just AI, right?
I think that's like there's like very little correlation with AI, and the real effects from AI haven't even materialized yet. And so of course that makes it even scarier of like, oh, it's already bad, and this like new variable
has
already
tidal wave
not
coming if this
exactly hasn't even
sectors. Yeah,
totally. And I think that I think the big thing is that one thing I find kind of concerning, and we talk about this in Game Plan a bit, is a lot of my friends react to that and they're like, okay, so to stand out, now I need to go get like 3 more degrees and then I'll stand out and like have this. And that is like, I think the wrong mindset of like, I think that we're moving into this world that, for better or for worse, is going to start devaluing a lot of those like traditional experiences, whether in terms of like your prestigious first job or, even just like for a lot of people getting more and more degrees, which creates a window of time for people to just like jump in, do cool things and work on projects. But I think, of course, it's also very anxiety inducing.
Ava, to what degree is it felt that one needs to learn AI to succeed at the moment?
I think you see two ends of the extreme there. You have people who take an immense amount of pride in the fact that they use AI for nothing. Like, if somebody uses AI in front of them, they're like, bleh, you're a loser, get that away from me, lame. And then on the other end of that, you have people who are so hyped up about the fact that they can use AI. I also think, and this is totally anecdotal, but I think that Gen Z, as the digital natives we are, who have never really had problems learning how to use technology and adopt technology, aren't thinking that seriously about, am I good at AI or am I not good at AI? Because we go onto the tool and we use it and we're like, oh, that makes sense. I know how to use this. Like, it's more intuitive for us to adopt it. I mean, I don't know. I've heard stories about my friends asking ChatGPT to tell them how to create a better prompt. That stuff is second nature to us. But I do really enjoy when I'm in a room with 2 of my peers and you have one person on one side who is talking about how excited they are about how they just vibe coded this website and it's so cool. And you have someone else who's sitting on the other side of the room like, I would never do that. You're lame and uncreative and lack humanity, and you just wasted 100 tons of water. So there's definitely some tension there. And I don't see that tension necessarily resolving itself in the near future. I see that tension, if anything, growing a little bit more.
Sneha, does that dichotomy ring true to you where you're situated? And which of those is more privileged, those positions, in your view?
I think that's a really good question. I think that totally is correct. Ava hit the nail on the head. I guess just to categorize myself, to be honest, like AI represented a fundamental shift in the way that I live my life. And I think that my life has been actually fundamentally reorganized around like the power that AI can provide to me as an individual. And I think that I feel super optimistic about that. And I think I've just like unlocked so much value. I think it's especially been in the last year when models have gotten really, really good that I have had so many moments of like, holy shit, I actually think this changes the way that I live my life. And like, there's just like so much more that I can do.
Can you say a bit more about that before you move to the,
yeah.
Give me some examples there of like, what's something that was a real aha moment?
Yeah, tell us about your power use of AI, Sneha.
Yeah, totally. I think first to explain where that shift came from, I think that a lot of people, and I actually understand where it comes from, a lot of people who are resistant, it's because they view AI simply as a vehicle to do whatever you do. People they think that we're just like using AI to do whatever we already do more efficiently, right? It's a way to like write the email that you already know how to write, but like,
do your term paper with one prompt. And
do your term paper with one prompt. So it's just like, obviously from that perspective, it's like, this is horrible. We're just like outsourcing our agency to this thing. And like, we know how to write emails. We should know how to write essays. Like, why are we handing that over to AI. And like, I actually get that perspective totally of like, if that's your only use case, then it just like seems super concerning on the merits. But I think that my shift with AI was like, it's actually not about, like, I know how to write an email. I'll write my own emails. Like, I don't like see that as a huge bottleneck in my life. But I think that the big shift was like, this actually makes me capable of doing new things that I couldn't do before. And I think that is what people are kind of missing, right? Where it's like, for example, if I want to learn a lot about a super like niche economic concept, I mean, like, I don't have any Nobel Prize winning economists in my contact list who I can just like head up and be like, hey, can I book you out for like 6 hours and just like pick your brain about this? Yeah. But what I can do with Claude, for example, which is like my like go-to model, is I can, ask it about a question, or I can even upload papers from specific economists who I really want it to like get into their brains. And I can literally just like back and forth spar with it for like however long I want and make use of its infinite patience and also its access to the internet and to also just like limitless knowledge that we've like documented, right? And like that is just like a fundamentally new thing where it's like I would not have gotten that experience or gotten that capability had I just been, operating within the previous realm of what was possible. And so I think that the difference, I think, is shifting your mindset from this will make what I can already do more efficient, because like we all know how to write emails, we should all know how to write emails, to this
like we don't. No, people don't know how to write.
Okay, well, that's a separate
text
problem.
Maybe. How about text?
Text. Okay. Yeah, emails is maybe a bad example. It's like you should know, I think obviously it's a fundamental life skill. If somebody texts you and you're like in a fight or something, you should just know how to like navigate that conversation and handle human relationships by yourself. I
mean, that's interesting though, because a lot of people are using AI to help them navigate these personal dynamics though, right?
And that is where I am kind of like, okay, this is going too far and this is getting kind of creepy. And like, I think it's stupid. If I received a text that I thought seemed AI generated when we were like having an argument or something, I would just cringe super. Like, I like totally understand like where people get that tension from. But I think the big mental unlock is like, this is not about taking the breakup text that we should already know how to write and, outsourcing that to AI. It's about unlocking fundamentally new possibilities that just like weren't around before. And I think once you make that leap, I think that's when you start to like fully internalize the potential of AI. And I think get to where I said I was, of just like, this reorganizes the way that I live my life.
Yeah, I think that cognitive offloading is a lot easier though than taking on that, unlocking that box of AI improving your potential. And we are creatures of convenience. But I think you're absolutely right, Sneha. I also think something really important to point out here is, again, Gen Z is not a monolith. There's a theory that Gen Z is split into pre-COVID Gen Z, post-COVID Gen Z. I don't even buy into that either. I think every 2 years in Gen Z, you get a new group of people. And I think we're seeing that folks on the older end of Gen Z are far more skeptical of, and I think that like I have 3 brothers and we fall perfectly. So my oldest brother's 2 years older than me. He's like, that's so dumb.
Just give us a sense of ages here so everyone's clear
so
what you mean
Mac
by
is
this.
27.
Yeah.
And he was born 1998. He's very much, it's stupid. It's going to end the world. It's not even that he gets angry about it insofar as he's just like, that's dumb, And then you have me who's 24 and I use AI, but I use AI very skeptically. I'm very shy about my use of AI. I feel a certain level of shame around my use of AI. I also think that that's a difference in, that's a very DC thing here, where we're very prideful in our ability to do our own thinking.
We got a bit of an East Coast, West Coast dynamic going on here.
Yeah, I mean, totally.
When Sneha came to DC a few weeks ago to visit, there was definitely this bit of jaw drop for some of the folks.
There was like an imposter, around. Yeah,
Totally.
who are like, it was just like talking about all sorts of crazy stuff. Yeah,
we're like so in on the AI policy, and we're like, these companies are the worst people in the world, and we have to stop them. Yeah. And Sneha comes to DC and is like, "What's up? I love ChatGPT. Let's go." And it was so.
Where's all the Meta Ray-Bans? I don't see any of them.
Yeah. Actually, I guess DC is gonna get Waymos soon.
Right. Yeah, we will get Waymos, but that difference is even Sneha just being a little bit younger than me. You go from no liking AI 27-year-old, 24-year-old who's ashamed of her AI use, to 20-year-old who's like, bring it on. I'm going to use this to make my life better. And it's totally has to do with the year that we were born in and what technology was happening when, at what formative points in our lives, whether we're going to be rejecting it or excited about it. And I think that's something that we need to talk more about when we talk to Gen Z, is that it's not even Gen Z 1 or Gen Z 2. It's Gen Z 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and every single one of us has different opinions.
Hi, I'm Mira Rahman. I cover money and retirement at the Globe and Mail. Every day, I talk to Canadians making big financial decisions, from affording a home to caring for aging parents. And a lot of them feel overwhelmed. That's where I come in. I help make sense of personal finance with real stories and no jargon. My goal is to help you retire rich, in dollars and in purpose. If that's journalism you value, head to globeandmail.com/subscribe.
So we've been talking a lot about chatbots. Ava, I want to stick with you for a second because a lot of the work you've been doing has been on AI companions. Can you just lay out a little bit about how you see the difference between the two?
A companion is a chatbot that was designed with the intention of forming a relationship with someone. So this is your replica, this is your character AI, where a general purpose model is something that can do anything you want it to do. And it's kind of like a squares and rectangle things. A general purpose AI can be a companion, but a companion can't be a general purpose AI.
And a companion is designed for a specific set of outcomes.
That's in if you look at the definition of a companion AI in a lot of the bills, that word intent is there. Do they have the intent to form a companionship with you? And while ChatGPT doesn't have an intent to form a relationship with you, you can make it form a relationship with you. So the difference is, it's important to make a differentiation when we're talking about policy, but it's also important not to let that differentiation lead you to believe that the general purpose AI tools cannot be used in that companion chatbot type of way.
How does Gen Z, recognizing now that it's actually 6 different generations, not one, so we've blown that idea up, how do they view relationships with AI and how these AIs entering into people's lives in a way that we would characterize as a relationship?
Right. So the number one thing that Gen Z is looking for is not to be judged. And that's why people find so much use out of these AI chatbots, is because that they know there's no judgment assigned. The AI is giving an output, but it's not judging them. There's also that certain level of positive affirmation and validation that people are looking for. They want to feel as if they're doing something right, and they want to know that what they're doing is the right thing. And these chatbots are designed to do that for them. So I think that's a lot of what people are getting, is this judgment-free support that they've never gotten in their lives. And I think that there's something really calming for people about being in these relationships with AI. And, on the other side of it, on the dating side of it, dating as a Gen Zer is a mess. It is really, really grim out there. There's a lot of papers about this. There's a lot of speculation about what is going on with Gen Z. Why isn't Gen Z having sex? Why isn't Gen Z going on dates? But I think that the convenience of not having to put yourself out there is really hitting home for people. And they're seeing, I don't have to put in the effort, but I can get this companionship out of this AI. That's really, really nice. And this interesting conflict is coming up, which is where people are now worried about their partners cheating on them with AI. And that's a big question in Gen Z right now, is, can you cheat on your partner with an AI? Yes or no? And if you ask people who are in relationships with these chatbots, these people are in love with their chatbots. And they fully believe that it is no different than a human. And I think that is actually the most human thing of all, to be able to get that level of comfort and validation from a robot, because it just proves, such a great part about our condition, which is how bad we want that.
Why would Gen Z be more concerned about the judgment of humans than other generations?
We grew up online in an environment where the content that went the most viral, the content that was the most popular, was content that included somebody judging somebody else, somebody canceling somebody else, somebody being really mean or inflammatory to somebody else. And that's what we were looking for online.
Sneha, you're on a university, living on a university campus, and those are places that are defined by personal relationships and by interacting with other people. Do you see this creeping into the way students are behaving and interacting and entering into relationships? And does Ava's characterization ring true?
I think that's definitely true. I think that also part of it has to do with, I think the pandemic really dampened our own relationships with socialization, and I think totally gets in the way of their ability to form normal connections. And I think that might have to do with it. I think that fortunately what I've seen has been that people in my bubble haven't so much been using AI as a direct substitute for connection, but I think that there has been this tendency to, for example, if you're having a fight with your boyfriend, you need to consult ChatGPT on like what to say before you talk to him next or whatever, right? And it's like, there's like this joke about how girls have their like group chat that's like their board of advisors, and it's like ChatGPT is like, entering their like board of advisors at every personal dispute they have, every emotional conflict they have, every like inner anxiety they have that they don't feel comfortable vocalizing to the outside world, they're going to run it through AI, right? I think that's a big shift. And I think that from what I've seen, fortunately, that hasn't necessarily overrated the power of their other relationships yet, but I can see how we would move towards that trajectory long term, if people stop feeling comfortable, because like that's a slippery slope where like eventually you stop seeing the value in even like, talking to your like in-person confidants at all, right? And I think that I think definitely gets really concerning. I definitely see that as a potentially slippery slope where over time people begin handing over some of those human experiences at an even faster rate.
And we've also been largely conditioned to displace our discomfort. I think my friend Maddie Freeman, who's a fellow, is incredible. And one of the things she says is that social media is like a pacifier. You get uncomfortable and you pick up your pacifier and you start scrolling on social media so you don't have to think about what makes you uncomfortable. And I think when we're talking about people who rely on ChatGPT to get them through uncomfortable relationship dynamics, it's just a second coming of that. You got really easy, or you got really good at, when something uncomfortable would happen to you, going to your phone and ignoring that discomfort. And now it's like, it's even better because you're not ignoring the discomfort, but you feel like you're actively working through the discomfort.
Yeah. One of my personal stumbling blocks with chatbots is I can't believe myself that these are actually private and confidential conversations. So when I hear about people trusting an AI to have these deeply personal conversations, I can't bring myself to be in that headspace. And why do you think you're much more trusting of AI?
We have no concept of privacy, especially online privacy as a generation.
But surely, so you don't think that your conversations with an AI are private?
I think one really, really good example of this is like just the cultural resistance to banning TikTok. I mean, like people were talking a lot about, this is, an app run by the CCP. People were like laying out these cases as to why this was like a national security threat. And I think that people were like, okay, they maybe can like abstractly see why that might be a problem, but the like inclination to use it is just way too strong. The like cultural attachment is just way too strong. As Ava said, that does not make a difference to us because everything we've ever used in our entire lives has been privacy invasive, and we just kind of like have accepted that as part of the terms and conditions of life, right? And so I think that it is like really, really hard to view that as not just like a natural trade-off that we're making every single time we engage with the online world.
Right. So maybe I knew a world where there was an expectation of privacy. And so that's more acute to do that, to make that trade-off. Yeah.
Yeah. I've given up on trying to lecture my friends about privacy just completely because it's just not there's no reception. It just doesn't matter to them. It's also really hard to conceptualize the potentially negative impacts of a lack of data privacy on an individual level. Because what are they going to do with just your data, right? It's not what they're doing with just your data. It's what they're doing with your data in the context of everybody else's data. So it's hard to think about, it's hard to conceptualize data privacy in that really big way.
The last thing I want to talk to you guys about is, one of the things I find most inspiring about both of you is that you both don't just know these technologies intimately, but you engage in politics and you engage in policymaking actively. So I want to talk a little bit about your political and policy engagement, and about the moment America's in right now in the political and policy space. Federally, among many, many other things, you have a president and administration who's hostile to AI policy at the moment, or AI regulation, I should say, at the moment. There's an executive order that's banning any state even engagement in AI regulation. Ava, when you look at the policy landscape, you've seen the transition from one administration to another. Do you think there is a space for AI regulation at the moment in America?
We're making space for AI regulation in America at the moment, I would say.
Here,
if you were to look at it on paper, if you're my grandpa who I just send headlines to, you would respond, "It's pointless, quit your job, move in with me, Ava, why are you doing that?" But I absolutely think there's space for it. And I think the administration's resistance to it And Sneha, correct me if you think I'm wrong, but it's almost like they showed their hand. They showed us and they showed the public that they're incredibly hostile to regulation. And now there's no takebacks. There's no walkbacks of that. And that gives us an incredible opportunity to massage the public and help them understand what that sentiment means for them and really increase the salience of AI as a voter issue and really make a difference in 2026 and really make a difference at the state level and at the local level. And that's why they want to take the ability for state and local governments to regulate away, is because
there was movement there and there was
exactly
politics there.
Because they know at a grassroots level that this issue is going to get quite popular. And as much as it is the most frustrating thing in the world to read about how these big companies and the administration is trying to push this moratorium down our throat, I'm looking at it as the greatest blessing of all time that they showed us their hand. And that now we can show that hand to the public and use it to build momentum and energy around passing more policy.
Totally.
And there's something really beautiful about the way it has brought so many different coalitions of people together. I mean, for the first time, you have the AI safety groups, you have the existential risk groups, you have the kids online safety groups, you have environmental groups coming together and saying the same thing. No, you cannot pass that policy. And that energy is, I think, in a lot of ways, what the people in our coalition needed to feel like they could keep going and to feel like they could push it forward. You know, things were getting really grim out there. I think after the Kids Online Safety Act failed, people were feeling really disappointed. They were feeling like nobody had their back. They were feeling like the public didn't care. And then this moratorium comes through and we get this incredible second wind. So I could sit here and tell you about how horrible our government is, but I just see it as a huge blessing. I'm like, thank you. Thank you for giving us that, because now we're going to make you guys look like idiots. Because that's a bad take. It's a really bad take.
I think, just to echo what Ava said, this is not slowing our roll at all. And I think that the reason why the EO came to be in the first place was because we were passing bills in the state level. And I think that people were freaking out about that.
Right?
And like we were winning, right? I mean, like there is concrete stuff that is happening. We are seeing governors make this, you know, an issue of focus for them. And by the way, it's not just Newsom and Hochul. I mean, Ron DeSantis in Florida has been talking nonstop about AI over the past couple of months, right? And so I think that they may be trying to sort of create the narrative that it's like an issue of the left, but it obviously is
Cox
not.
in Utah is one of the most aggressive movers here, right?
Cox's, DeSantis's. I mean, for Marjorie Taylor Greene, I mean, obviously she's no longer serving in Congress, but she was, you know, she's honestly much more skeptical of AI than even we are, and I think has been like a very, you know, a very big advocate of regulation. So I think there is this like convenient narrative that people are presenting that this is an issue of the left, but people are trying to impose their woke excesses on AI. That is not what's happening. That's obviously not the case, and we have a super broad and bipartisan coalition. In fact, I would say there probably hasn't been an issue in recent political memory that has commanded such stunning bipartisan majorities of support. And I think that also one thing that I want to clarify is that this EO is unenforceable.
That was my first question about it. Like, what do they even imagine doing?
They're trying to scare state legislators.
Yeah. I think they're trying to create a chilling effect, and I think that the reason why this happened is because Congress struck it down 2 times, right?
So fine, we'll do it with the Sharpie and the signature. Yeah.
Exactly. And it creates the viral impression that like, oh my God, this is the death of AI regulation. Sneha, quit your job. You know, Ava, quit your job. Like it's all over. But that's actually not what's happening. I think that those of us who, you know, sort of, I mean, it was really funny. Ava mentioned how I was in DC recently. I was in DC actually when the EO got signed. And I like distinctly remember the night that we were, I mean, Ava was there too. I like distinctly remember the night that we were all at this like random bar that was playing like, what was just playing
loud
like,
music,
goofy, just like goofy.
We were trying to have a good
loud
time.
songs. Yeah. We were trying to have a good time,
and then
which we never get to do. And then obviously this like EO gets signed, and we're all like freaking out, like literally in the middle of the night. And you know, all of us are kind of just like debriefing what this means. And I think that if there is intent from anyone in this equation to scare us off, that's not happening, right? So I think that we're going to keep working on it, and we're going to keep hoping that, you know, the administration is going to change its posture as well.
I mean, the other actors trying to scare you guys off mostly because you've been so effective are some of the companies themselves. So
totally.
Can you tell a little bit about what your experience with OpenAI in the last year has been?
Oh, I mean, that's a great question. I think
hear all of this knowing that she still uses ChatGPT. I have to say, When I heard about this, I deleted my ChatGPT account in solidarity for my friends at Encode. And
now they didn't?
Yeah.
How does that make you feel?
I think, okay,
You
I
feel
think
duped there?
$2
Yeah.
I mean, we obviously appreciate the acts of solidarity, but I think that I think everybody on the Encode team still uses ChatGPT, and I think that fundamentally the reason for that is because this stuff actually just like augments our capacity. I think that's also sort of how I think about it in terms of just like I have a duty to be the most effective individual possible, and if like this is part of that equation, then like that's something I'll embrace. But more broadly about the conversation about the companies, I think that it's not just OpenAI. I think that like that obviously there's a lot of attention around that, especially with our experience, being subpoenaed.
Say a few words about that. Like what happened?
Yeah,
there? I mean,
totally.
That was a pretty dramatic moment.
Yeah. So I think that, I mean, as there's been a lot of news about, there was a big, and there still sort of is some ongoing legal battles around this sort of conversation around the restructuring of OpenAI from a nonprofit to a for-profit. And, as we've known, there, has been this ongoing tension between Sam Altman and Elon Musk for a long time. So there was this lawsuit, Encode, alongside a couple of other AI safety organizations, filed amicus briefs sort of questioning some of the situation around OpenAI's restructuring, because we honestly thought they just weren't providing good enough answers in their conversations around restructuring about how we would still empower the nonprofit arm. And 3 months ago at this point, our general counsel, Nathan, was personally subpoenaed, and kind of obviously that was a pretty jarring experience for all of us, in addition to Encode at its corporate address. And I think that honestly, our takeaway from that, and again, this is, I think that's going to surprise a lot of people. It's very similar to my takeaway and our takeaway on the Trump thing is like, you know what? Like we're, this obviously, I think it's like ridiculous to sort of exercise power against at that time, a three-person nonprofit. I myself am still not even like a full-time employee, right? So it's just like
the weight of OpenAI and Altman coming down on a three-person campus-based organization.
Totally. But I think that the thing that I want to emphasize is just like I don't want to like underestimate our power, and I don't want to understate how proud I am of how far we've come, of how impressive of an operation we've built, and also just how much the public is on our side.
No question about that. We started this conversation by talking a little bit about how my generation and older generations are probably ill-equipped to either understand properly or fully embrace and manage this transition that this new technology represents. Ava, what gives you hope that yours will get it right?
That we already are in a lot of cases. I mean, just hearing Sneha speak right then, I'm smiling the whole time because that's what gives me hope. I mean, I call it delusional optimism. I can't not have hope. I would go crazy and hate my life because of how hard this job is, because of how consistently we are slamming ourselves against a brick wall and begging people who do not want to pay attention to us to pay attention to us. And so I do have a certain level of manufactured hope that is just there to keep me going on a day-to-day basis because there is no other option. And I think that's where a lot of it comes from for me, is that I know what we're doing is the right thing to do. And that's what makes me hopeful. Another thing that makes me hopeful is just how youth-led this pushback on the AI moratorium is. At the core of that coalition is a group of a couple 24-year-olds, 22-year-olds, 23-year-olds saying, what comes next? What are we going to do next? And the way that the entire coalition and the entire responsible tech industry, I would say, more or less, has put their egos aside and said, we trust you all to lead this and to steer this ship, is something that makes me incredibly hopeful. It's something that if I think too hard about it, it could freak me out, because then I'd be like, oh, they don't have an answer. There's no plan. So they're just trusting us.
No, that's on you. That's on you.
Right? But yeah, exactly. You guys figure it out. And there's a lot of people in our generation that feel a lot of resentment for that. They're like, older generations have created these problems and now they want us to solve it. For me, I'm like, bring it on. I love solving hard problems. That is so, it's not fun, but there's something really, really, really special about the group of young leaders and about the campus programs and the thousands of grassroots voices that surround us and is only growing. And just the solidarity is really incredible. Like Sneha mentioned, when that executive order dropped, we were all at the bar. We had just taken a shot of tequila. And then we didn't even think twice but to sit down, open up our laptops, read it, and react to it.
Oh,
And
there's like photo evidence of this.
There's great photos of it.
There's ample photo evidence. Yeah.
That's what makes me so hopeful, is this just sheer passion and willingness to do the really hard things that a lot of people in our generation are feeling, and more people in our generation are waking up to. That's what makes me really, really hopeful, is when I'm with those people and when we have our heads down and we're working really, really hard.
Yeah, I'll just close by echoing that and kind of just doubling down on what I said before. I mean, for the first time over the past couple of years, there are organizations like ours, like YPA, that are like actually, creating outcomes, that are actually making things happen, that are actually getting bills and things like this passed. And like that to me is just like insane, where I actually feel even more hopeful, because it's like, how crazy is it that this organization that's like run by a 21-year-old college student is actually having serious policy influence, right? And like how cool is it that that's like the new state of the world, where like that kind of thing is possible. And I am just like super fundamentally energized by that state of the world. So that's what I'll end on. Yeah.
Look, I mean, you guys are awesome and inspiring and having a huge impact. And as someone who works in this space, I'm just so glad that you guys are doing this and are taking charge of a set of problems and transitions that I think a lot of people in my community, in the policy world and academic world, are sort of just so fixated on the problems and how hard they all look. And you're kind of doing the opposite and embracing that challenge and taking it on and winning. And so thank you for what you're doing. And I feel lucky to have talked to you today. So thank you.
Yeah, this was such a great conversation. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I'm feeling great after this, honestly.
Me too.
Yeah, I can tell
Me
Ava
too.
and I are just
I'm not
like,
optimistic very often, but I'm feeling it now. So you did it. So thank you. Machines Like Us is produced by Paradigms in collaboration with the Globe and Mail. The show is produced by Mitchell Stewart. Our theme song is by Chris Kelly. Our executive producer is James Millward. Special thanks to Angela Pacenza and the team at the Globe and Mail. If you liked the interview you just heard, please subscribe and leave a rating or a comment. It really does help us get the show to as many people as possible. Machines Like Us is supported by the Max Bell School of Public Policy at McGill University. Learn more at mcgill.ca/maxbellschool. Machines Like Us is also supported by CFAR, a global research organization based in Canada. Explore their work at cfar.ca.
Hi, I'm Jennifer Yang. I cover health science for the Globe and Mail. It often feels like we're drowning in health information or misinformation. I want to help you make sense of it by bringing you into the hospitals and labs where stories begin. My goal is to demystify research and share what I get to feel every day in this job: the wonder of scientific discovery. If that's journalism you value, head to globeandmail.com/subscribe.